Now for the news in detail. 1,375 people have died from COVID-19 in Brazil overnight as the death toll there tops 52,000. The number of global COVID-19 cases has crossed 9 million, while the death count nears 477,000. More on that now in this report.
As the world grapples with a resurgence of COVID-19 cases, Latin America continues to be the virus epicenter with over 100,000 deaths. As the US opens after lockdown, 7 states have reported the highest surge in the cases. Infectious Disease Director Anthony Fauci has warned the spike is due to the increase in community spread.
Right now, the next couple of weeks are going to be critical in our ability to address those surgings that we're seeing in Florida, in Texas, in Arizona, and in other states. They're not the only ones that are having a difficulty. Bottom line, Mr. Chairman, it's a mixed bag. Some good and some now we have a problem with.
Tokyo's Governor Yuriko Koch said the city will record a large number of the virus cases after a cluster of infections was discovered in his office. Over in Australia, medics have reported the first death from the virus in over a month as the state of Victoria logged a double-digit rise in cases for 8th straight day.
We are as well prepared as any nation in the world. The case numbers are low by even Australia's historic standing. They are minimal by global standards, but they are of concern. They could spike further.
Meanwhile, German authorities in the state of North Rhine-Westphalia have reimposed lockdown restrictions in 2 districts after a spike in cases. In the UK, health leaders have cautioned authorities to prepare for the real risk of a second wave of the virus.
Here in Pakistan, the number of coronavirus cases has surpassed 180,000, with nearly 3,900 infections reported in the past 24 hours. 60 more people have died overnight, raising the total number of fatalities to 3,755. The Health Ministry said the recovered patients' tally has crossed over 77,700. The ministry said over 100,000 cases are active in the country. It said the province of Punjab reported the most new infections with 1,516 cases. Pakistan has decided to slash staff strength at the Indian High Commission in Islamabad by half in a tit-for-tat move. In a statement, the Foreign Office rejected baseless allegations of mistreating Indian High Commission officials in Islamabad. It said those allegations are part of a smear campaign to distort facts and deny the culpability of Indian officials involved in criminal offenses in Pakistan. The Foreign Office summoned the Indian Charge d'Affaires and told him to implement the decision within 7 days. This comes days after the brief arrest of 2 Indian officials in a hit-and-run case in Islamabad and the harassment of Pakistani officials in India. Pakistan has already downgraded its diplomatic ties with India after it illegally annexed occupied Kashmir last year in August. Indian troops have martyred 2 more civilians in occupied Kashmir's Pulwama district. The civilians were killed during a cordon and search operation in the Manzu area of the district. This brings the death toll from violence by Indian troops to 34 since the start of this month. On Monday, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation called on India to immediately halt its military actions in occupied Kashmir. Kashmir has been reeling under a curfew and communications blackout since India stripped the region of its autonomy in August last year. Syria says it has responded to Israeli strikes on the southern, central, and eastern parts of the country. In a statement, the Syrian army said 2 of its soldiers had been killed and 4 others wounded in strikes on an installation in the southern town of Salkhad. The military said Israeli jets also hit an army outpost in Salamiyah and another in Sabura town in Hama province. The bases are in zones in eastern and southern Syria, which Israel has hit in recent months. State media said the missiles came through the east and northeast of Palmyra city. The Israeli army, though, has declined to comment over that development. Thousands of Israeli protesters have demonstrated against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's plans to annex the occupied West Bank. In Tel Aviv, protesters called for a 2-state solution and opposed Netanyahu's seizure plans. Demonstrators said they are afraid of the annexation's consequences of starting a big war in the region. They criticized Netanyahu's policies and called for a democratic process. Over 1,000 parliamentarians from across Europe have signed a letter strongly opposing Israeli annexation plans. The letter has raised serious concerns about the proposals and calls for commensurate consequences. Syria's Foreign Minister Walid al-Muallim says Damascus has started working with its allies to face the consequences of U.S. sanctions. Last week, Washington imposed sanctions on 39 individuals and entities, including the Syrian president, to choke off revenue for his government. In a news conference, Muallim said the act aims to affect the Syrian presidential elections scheduled for 2021. Earlier, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said many more sanctions against the Assad government should be expected soon. Syria has already been under U.S. and EU sanctions that have frozen the assets of the state and hundreds of companies and individuals. Well, the Arab League has called for a political solution to the Libyan crisis in accordance with the Berlin Conference and Cairo Declaration. In a virtual meeting called for by Egypt, the League's foreign ministers discussed the reservations of the Government of National Accord on the Cairo Declaration. In a statement, the Arab League's Secretary General, Ahmed Abul Ghait, said Libya is passing through a dangerous turn in the course of its conflict. He said the military option will not achieve victory for any side and will not bring peace or establish stability on Libyan soil. Responding, the GNA has criticized the Cairo-based League, accusing it of having double standards. The Foreign Ministry said the League's sessions have been called for without the required quorum. Meanwhile, the Libyan army said it discovered 3 unidentified bodies in an area south of the capital, Tripoli. Malawians have voted in a rerun election a year on from President Peter Mutharika's disputed victory that was annulled nearly 5 months ago. Malawians have voted in a rerun poll 5 months after President Peter Mutharika's disputed 2019 victory was annulled. Malawi's judiciary overturned Mutharika's narrow victory in February over systematic and grave irregularities. Vying for a second term, he is contesting against Lazarus Chakwera, who opposes or heads an opposition coalition. Mutharika's disputed win also sparked months of anti-government protests. Now, after a week of escalating tensions and leveling threats, North Korea has suspended plans for military action against South Korea. State media said that decision was taken in a military commission meeting chaired by the Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un after taking the prevailing situation into consideration. South Korea has said it is closely reviewing Pyongyang's decision to suspend military action plans. The Unification Ministry spokesperson Yo Sang-ki reiterated Seoul's commitment towards keeping inter-Korean agreements.
The government's original stance that inter-Korean agreements must be kept remains unchanged. Apart from this is a reminder that activities which cause tensions between the two Koreas and pose risks to the safety of residents in the border area, such as releasing anti-North Korea leaflets, will continue to be sternly dealt with.
The NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has called for Berlin to play a more prominent role in the security alliance. Stoltenberg's comments followed U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to withdraw troops from Germany.
The NATO chief sat down for an interview at a time when cohesion between member states is under the radar. Stoltenberg said the world needs more German leadership, and NATO expects Germany to play an even more important role in shaping the course of the alliance. He said Germany now has the largest defense budget in the EU, and third in NATO, behind the UK and the US. Stoltenberg said he urged Trump to maintain presence of US troops in Europe prior to the official announcement of troops withdrawal. He said said the presence of troops is important for security for both the US and Europe, as peace and stability in Europe adds to the security of North America. Meanwhile, White House National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien said troops withdrawn from Germany may be redeployed to Indo-Pacific. He said troops will be redeployed to confront China, which is part of Trump's great power competition under his strategic vision for the future.
I'll be back after this break with plenty more news. Stay tuned for that. Welcome back. Peaceful demonstrations against police brutality and racism in the U.S. continue for the 29th day since the custodial killing of George Floyd. Protesters in Washington, D.C., Oakland, and Seattle marched through the streets to demand widespread police reforms and racial justice.
As the Black Lives Matter protests continue, in Washington, protesters called for Emancipation statue to be taken down, depicting former President Abraham Lincoln and an African American. Elsewhere in Oakland, California, young protesters marched to demand the removal of police from schools ahead of the district school board vote on the issue. Meanwhile, Seattle police reported the third shooting in the so-called Capitol Hill organized protest zone, a day after the city vowed to take back the area. Over in Kentucky, the Louisville Metro Police Department fired Brett Hankinson, one of the police officers involved in the fatal shooting of Breonna Taylor. At Atlanta's Ebenezer Baptist Church, friends and family members paid tribute to Rayshard Brooks, who was shot dead by police on 12th of June. In a fiery speech, civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr.'s daughter, Bernice King, urged demonstrators to keep marching until Black lives actually begin to matter.
Don't you stop until Black lives matter in every state, in every city, in every hamlet, in every village, in every sector of American society, and ultimately the world. And I close that in honor of Ahmaud Arbery, in honor of Breonna Taylor, in honor of George Floyd, in honor of Rayshard Brooks and countless others. Don't stop until it matters that dignity, justice, and equity are a reality for all Black lives. Rayshard Brooks' death will not be in vain, because justice will roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream.
Earlier, Twitter placed another warning notice on President Donald Trump's post, threatening serious force against the protesters in the U.S. Capitol.
A powerful earthquake of 7.4 magnitude has struck the southern Mexico's Pacific coast, killing at least 6 people. The earthquake swayed buildings in Mexico City and sent thousands fleeing onto the streets. The government agency said La Crucecita was the epicenter of the earthquake. About 200 houses in the area have been damaged, including 30 which have been badly impacted. The state governor of Oaxaca, Alejandro Murat, said the hospitals are dealing with the situation adequately.
The damages to the hospitals in the Central Valley and the IMSS Public Hospital in Huatulco are not structural damages, and they can continue working. As of 300 in the afternoon, we can confirm that communications and basic services like electricity and water are all 95% re-established, and what's left will be attended to by tonight.
Meanwhile, a light aircraft has crashed in northern Mexico, killing the pilot and all 5 passengers on board. Now, the U.S. e-commerce giant Amazon said it is launching a $2 billion climate pledge fund to support the development of sustainable technologies. This dedicated venture investment program will back visionary companies to facilitate their transition to a zero-carbon economy. In a statement, the CEO, Jeff Bezos, said companies of all sizes and stages from around the world will be considered. He said each prospective investment will be judged on its potential to accelerate the path to zero carbon. Amazon has also pledged to meet the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement by 2040. As part of the climate pledge, the company agreed to buy 100,000 electric delivery vans from a vehicle manufacturer, Rivian. Now, in Russia's Lake Baikal, an outbreak of disease among the sponge population can pose a threat to its famously crystal clear waters. Scientists have noticed a drastic decline in the sponge population, especially in the Bay of Listvianka, that has been a popular tourist spot. More on that now in this report.
For 5 years, researchers have been monitoring the number of sponges and collecting samples to see how many of them are diseased. However, it is not entirely clear what is causing the spread of disease among the population. They say at first, diseased sponges lost their pigment or turned a rose color, then parts of the seabed became covered in dying organic matter.
On the face of it, we see that in places with a higher anthropogenic impact, the situation with diseased sponges is significantly worse. In the Bay of Listvianka, I already consider it to be a local ecological catastrophe because the diversity of sponges there has been lost. The number of them has fallen catastrophically, and everything there is covered in a layer of slime, dying organic matter. There is no chance for the ecosystem to recover in the near future.
Sponges play a vital role in filtering the water in Lake Baikal. According to the scientists, a sponge of only 5 centimeters in diameter can filter up to 20 liters of water in 24 hours. They believe drastic measures need to be taken to halt the spread of the disease.
Listvianka is a place that I think should be temporarily closed to tourists because nature can heal itself and it can do it quite quickly. But it needs to be left alone for some time at least. Then we would need to observe certain rules because it's all built up for many years.
Baikal is the world's largest freshwater lake and is home to many unique species.
Asian stock markets are trading higher as investors hope for a revival of economic activity following the easing of lockdown restrictions. Seoul's Kospi is trading over 1.5% higher as shares of Samsung Electronics and chipmaker SK Hynix surged over 3% each. The Shanghai Composite has gained a fraction while the Nikkei 225 is trading marginally higher. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index is trading flat with the Chinese Tencent stock touching a new record high of 500 Hong Kong dollars per share. Meanwhile, the international benchmark Brent crude oil price has lost a fraction. Time now to find out what the weather is like around the world. Well, for the latest updates on these and other stories, you can always follow us on our social media at Indus.news. Thanks for watching.